Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Diablo 4. Today we're talking Malignant hearts. Now we're nicely into Season 1. We're at that point where we're really seeing experimentation with the full roster of the hearts. To my surprise, hearts do not stay at the same percent ranges, massively improving those rates as you reach higher tiers and higher quality hearts. So there's been a lot more potential than expected. That concept aside though, what about the insane hearts in particular? The ones that had potential going in but have been ridiculous in play. Look at the silliness of that one Wrathful heart, the Barber, allowing us to build up so much damage in one AoE pop that I've seen it working in hilarious examples, such as the player that made it to level 100 first in Season 1, Mr. Leguan, who has now defeated Uber Lilith using the Barber heart. As you can see, it kind of just crunches the health pool after a delay. Absolutely busted. To say the least, there's a variety of really effective hearts then, so strong you have to wonder if they're going to get nerfed. But what are the best ones right now? What are the hearts you'd consider even maybe OP? Each class has at least one, in some case multiple, but I'm going to highlight the best for each class, and then we're going to take a look at some of the best universal hearts everyone should consider. So let's get started. We'll begin with the class-specific hearts. Each class has 3 regular hearts and then 1 Wrathful that only their class can use. Surprisingly, while the Wrathful options are often great, they're not always the most impactful pick. Let's start with my main, the Necromancer, as the great example of that. The Sacrilegious heart is a vicious heart which you can get as early as World Tier 1. This insane concept allows for constant procs of corpse tendrils, resummoning your minions and popping corpse explosions all over the place without you even doing it yourself. The downside with these auto-popped abilities is they're going to deal way less damage than normal, but the benefit is 0 cooldown, infinite chain casts of corpse tendrils. That's an AoE pull-in and stun, and with the meta aspect that is Grasping Veins, you're also gaining this constant boost of crit chance and crit damage. So just for that alone, this heart is so good. With a nice optimized build, you only spend 1 point in the skill tree for Corpse Explosion, so even though it's dealing way less damage than it normally would, it doesn't matter because it's just generating essence each time it pops, and then provides you with a big damage buff and even another from the Paragon. Interestingly, this auto-trigger mechanic seems to have a priority system. If you are using Summon Skeletons, it will always auto-summon those as a priority if you're not currently at the cap. Then it'll use Corpse Tendrils every 3 seconds roughly, which is always good, and then it'll pop Corpse Explosions until the next tendril. This concept alone then has skyrocketed Necromancer mob clear potential and truly feels game-changing for the class. While Necromancer has some brilliant options in their hearts, if I could only pick one for each class, definitely going to be this one for Necromancer. Moving to Druid next, we have one that's both really effective and just fun. The Inexorable Force heart provides Druid with a concept every other class had until now, that all-important pull-in mechanic, dragging enemies into one location, grouping them up for that easier mob clear. This is always going to improve their ability to clear up packs of enemies, especially without, in many cases, you benefit from having more targets in a tight location being hit by an ability. So a pull-in is always great for that, it's just the Druids couldn't necessarily do it themselves. Well, now they can, and because of that, I think this heart is going to squeeze its way into every Druid build, or the majority, for the entire length of Season 1. So if you've not given this one a try as a Druid, you absolutely should. Next we have the controversial class that is Sorcerer, with a much less exciting but genuinely best pick, Talrasha. For each unique element you deal damage with, you deal increased damage for a short period. This essentially amounts to plus 30% multiplying damage permanently, which is clearly very effective and therefore desired. Compared to the two we just looked up before this, it's a lot less interesting and exciting, with no real interesting mechanics to it at all. Just a nice damage bump for mixing up your element damages. Helpful and clearly a very good pick for this class, one that most will probably be using, but less exciting mechanically. Moving on, when it comes to Rogue, there's actually 2 options that it's going to be really hard to pick between. Firstly, Trickery, a brutal defense heart which provides a shadow decoy that taunts enemies. That works well in 2 ways, but it also groups up melee enemies as they rush to attack the decoy that just stands there. In a way, that works as a sort of grouping up pull-in mechanic, so there's big potential here, both defensively and offensively, making it a very universal, very good pick for any rogue build. But I also have to acknowledge their Wrathful heart Vile Apothecary. It has a chance to trigger all imbuement effects at half their potency, which is ridiculously good and pushes the imbuement builds, which were already pretty much top tier picks, to a stable position of the strongest rogue build concept currently. You're seeing both Twisting Blade and Penetrating Shot builds based on imbuements, at the top of the pack for this season for this reason. Finally though, we come to the Barbarian, which find themselves in a really strange spot in Season 1, but are promised some big love soon. This isn't just represented by the class and its a variety of issues currently though, but also its current heart choices. These are meant to be so impactful that they're too OP to stay in the game post Season 1, and Barbarians just don't have any particularly standout ones. And Cotton highlighted the focused Rage Heart for me in particular. After spending X amount of Fury within 2 seconds, your next non-basic skills, the critical strike chances increased. Certainly useful, more useful in certain bar builds than others, but it says a lot that the current highest level Barbarians aren't even using Barbarian exclusive hearts at all. They're just using universal ones, which seem to have way more impact than these. So maybe Barbarian hearts will see a buff soon. Now with the class specific best hearts highlighted, what about the universal best ones? That, you know, most of us are running in some form or another for good reason. First of this list, and honestly most impactful one then, is that Wrathful heart, the Barber, allowing any build that can store up damage quickly to dominate, which means every class. In fact, it's allowing crazy interactions like popping world bosses from say 30% to 0 in the moment it goes off. Basically, damage within say 2 to 4 seconds is going to be absorbed by the target hit. Then that absorbed damage will erupt onto surrounding enemies. Said stored damage is increased by % times per second baseline, which scales the damage to outrageous levels, obviously. It is painfully obvious that this is so strong when we look at say most of the top players currently on all classes using this heart. The only reason to not use it is if you have a better alternative Wrathful that's just too good to not use for your current build. Or if killing an enemy in 2 to 4 seconds is actually too long for you and your crazy strong build is killing everything in like 1 to 2 seconds anyway. But even then, this heart is going to become more relevant as time goes on, as we start to push higher Nightmare tier dungeons and need stored damage and the AoE it provides in general. So I think the heart is just going to become more and more popular and is the one I'm most expecting to be toned down a little bit. In the meantime though, definitely try it. Following that, let's talk about the next universal heart, Revenge. It requires the use of a defensive, subterfuge or macabre skill to work, but if you can smoothly fit one of those into your build, this seems like the best defensive heart in the game. Up to 20% of incoming damage is instead completely suppressed. Then when you use one of those 3 skill types, all suppressed damage is then amplified by 250% times and then explodes, dealing a massive fire damage burst to nearby enemies. So you mitigate 20% of incoming damage and then blow up in fire for a big amplified damage. Yeah, that's why it's looking to be the best defensive pick. That's just really good on paper and certainly in practice. Amazingly, again, it's a brutal heart, not a Wrathful, so it's easy to fit into builds, and you probably expect it to be a Wrathful considering how strong that concept is. As we push higher tier dungeons though, something that helps mitigate damage further to such an effective level, I think is just going to become more and more popular as well, outside of that explosive fire damage that, you know, works as a side benefit. We are seeing this as another popular pick currently though, for the current level 100s, and it's another one I expect to see become more popular. Last up for universals, I want to highlight one that has high popularity with specific builds. Take Bone Spear for example, a top tier build in the current meta of all builds in the game. Necromancers using this want as much crit chance as possible to get as close or literally to 100% crit chance. Therefore, the universal Vicious Heart, Tempting Fate, works hand in hand with that concept. You'll gain a huge amount of crit strike damage, specifically additive damage, which really helps in the early days of the season, but in exchange you'll deal way less non-crit damage. That downside doesn't matter at all if you're critting enough or of course are at 100% crit chance. When working well then, it essentially mitigates the very nasty crit damage nerf that 1.1 introduced, allowing us to reach very high damage numbers quickly. The problem, of course, is that this is so not worth running if you don't have high enough crit chance. And there are, you know, a majority of classes and builds that aren't doing that. So for a lot of builds, a lot of people, this just won't work. But for the few builds that do reach really high crit chance, this is extremely strong and deserves like a mention. But there you have it. That's my overview of the hearts currently. If there's any you think I've missed though, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I do hope this has been useful to you. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.